Your closest friend calls you at 9 in the evening with news they have been waiting 2 years to give. The offer came through. Better title, better money. The thing they have been grinding toward since before you met. And in the half second before you say, congratulations, something cold moves through your chest. It is fast, you cover it. You put warmth into your voice, and you mean most of it, and they hang up happy. And they never hear the thing that happened in that half second. But you heard it. You spend the rest of the night quietly disgusted with yourself over a reaction that lasted less than a second. Here is the part nobody points out to you. That same week, you read about a man, roughly your age, who sold his company for $400 million. You felt nothing, not a flicker. You scrolled past him the way you scroll past weather. That should not make sense. If envy were about money, the $400 million stranger should have hit you 1,000 times harder than your friend's promotion. He did not hit you at all. He did not even register. Your friend, whose new salary you could probably guess within $10,000, wrecked your evening, so envy is not measuring what you think it is measuring. The clearest description of this was written roughly 2,300 years ago by a man who spent his entire adult life as a legal outsider in the city he made famous. He was not born there. Under the law, he was a resident alien, which meant he could not vote, could not hold office, and could not own the ground his own school stood on. He studied at the greatest institution of his era for 20 years. When its founder died, the leadership went to the founder's nephew, and he left the city. He knew from the inside what it feels like to be passed over by someone standing exactly where you are standing. And when he sat down to write out how this emotion actually operates, he did not describe it as a moral failure. He described it as a mechanism with a specific range, specific triggers, and a specific blind spot. This video is about that mechanism. Why the stranger with $400 million cannot touch you. Why your friend can level you with a phone call. And what that half second of cold is actually reporting about your life. You already know the verdict on this feeling because you have handed it down on yourself 100 times. The verdict is that you are a small person, that a real friend would have felt only joy, that the cold half second is evidence of something rotted at your center, and the fact that you hid it makes you a liar on top of everything else. Then the advice arrives, and it is always the same 3 sentences. Comparison is the thief of joy. Stay in your own lane. Be happy for other people. None of that is wrong exactly. All of it is useless because it addresses the wrong question. It tells you to stop feeling something without ever explaining what the feeling was doing there. You cannot dismantle a mechanism you refuse to look at, so it goes underground. There is a strange consistent detail in how human beings talk about this emotion, and it holds across languages and across centuries. People accuse others of it constantly. People almost never claim it for themselves. The phrase that shows up over and over in the ancient sources is the denial, "I do not envy him," spoken by people who very clearly do. It appears in moral lectures, it appears in courtroom accusations, and it appears in denial. What it almost never appears as is a confession. Think about what that means. Anger has a socially acceptable version. Grief has one. Fear has one. Even hatred can be admitted out loud in the right room. This one has no acceptable version. It is the one emotion that, essentially, nobody in recorded history has voluntarily raised their hand for, which produces a specific kind of loneliness. You feel it. You assume you are unusual for feeling it. Everyone around you is running the same silence. And because it never gets said out loud, it never gets examined. And because it never gets examined, it keeps running unsupervised in the background of your closest relationships. The shame is not protecting anybody. It is just keeping the mechanism out of the light. So put it in the light. Start with the range. Aristotle's definition in Book 2 of the Rhetoric is precise in a way most emotional writing is not. He calls it a kind of pain, but not pain at good fortune in general. Pain at the good fortune of people who are like you or who appear to be like you. Then he does the thing that makes the whole passage useful. He lists the dimensions of likeness: birth, kinship, age, disposition, reputation, possessions. Read that list again with your own life in mind. Those are not abstract categories. That is a description of the people in your phone. And then he adds the part that almost never gets quoted, which is where the real information is. People who are not equal or similar in any of those ways will not feel this toward each other. Even one dimension of distance can shut the whole thing down. He gives examples. People separated by a century. People living at opposite ends of the sea. People far above you and people far below you. He is describing a range limit. He also draws two lines around it that clean up most of the confusion people have about this feeling. The first line separates it from fear. If the pain you feel at someone else's good fortune comes from what their success might cost you, your job, your position, your standing, that is not this emotion at all. That is fear wearing its coat. The mark of the real thing is that it hurts, even when their win takes nothing from you. The second line separates it from indignation. Indignation is pain at good fortune that is undeserved. That one has a moral case behind it, and you can say it out loud at dinner without embarrassing yourself. What Aristotle is describing is different and worse. Pain at the good fortune of someone equal to you, whether or not they deserved it, often precisely because they did. That is why the excuses do not work. When you catch yourself building a case for why they did not really earn it, you are trying to convert the feeling into indignation, because indignation is respectable and this is not. This is why the $400 million stranger did nothing to you. Not because you are enlightened about wealth, because he is out of range. There is no dimension along which you and he are close enough for the comparison to feel live. His life does not read to you as a version of yours. It reads as a different category of object, like a satellite. Your friend is inside the range, on every single dimension on the list. Same age, roughly, same starting position, same field or close to it, same kind of apartment until last Tuesday, same reputation among the same 40 people. That is 6 for 6 on likeness, which means the comparison is not just possible, it is automatic. You do not choose to run it, it runs. And here is the detail that should reframe the shame entirely. The mechanism did not fire because you are a bad friend. It fired because they are close to you. Distance is what turns it off. So the strength of that half second is not a measurement of your character. It is a measurement of proximity, which means something uncomfortable, and if you sit with it correctly, freeing. The people you are least able to feel uncomplicated joy for are the people you have let closest. The mechanism only works at short range. And short range is another way of saying, these are your people. If proximity is the trigger, then the pain should not scale with the size of the other person's win. It should scale with how narrow the gap is. That prediction has been tested. And the cleanest test came from an Olympic podium. In 1995, 3 psychologists, Victoria Medvec, Scott Madey, and Thomas Gilovich, published a study in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology on the emotional reactions of medalists at the 1992 Summer Olympics. They had people watch footage of athletes immediately after their events, and again on the medal stand, and rate how happy each athlete looked. The result inverted the standings. On average, bronze medalists looked happier than silver medalists. Silver is objectively the better outcome. Silver is second in the world, and silver looked worse. The explanation the researchers gave is about which comparison is closest at hand. The silver medalist's nearest alternative is gold, 1 place up, often a fraction of a second up, so the whole event compresses into a single thought. I almost won. The bronze medalist's nearest alternative is 4th, which is no medal, no podium, no photograph. So the whole event compresses into a different thought. At least I made it. Same podium, same 3 people, opposite emotional realities, produced entirely by which direction each person was looking. The researchers anticipated the obvious objection. Maybe silver medalists were simply the ones who expected more going in, and disappointment is just the distance between expectation and result. They tested it with a regression analysis and found no effect of expected finish on the happiness ratings. Then they went and reproduced the pattern outside the Olympics entirely, at the 1994 Empire State Games. A state-level competition, no global audience, no endorsement money on the line. Same inversion, which means it is not about the stakes. It is about the direction you are looking. This has been checked again with better tools. In 2020, a research team ran a conceptual replication using a large set of medal stand photographs from the Olympic Multimedia Library and Getty images covering the games from 2000 through 2016 and analysed the faces with automated expression coding rather than human raters. The pattern held. They found support both for the nearest alternative explanation and for a second one, that silver medalists came in with higher expectations and were therefore further from what they had pictured. Now bring that back to the phone call. The reason your friend's promotion hurt is not that the promotion was large. It is that the gap between you and them was small enough to feel crossable. And they crossed it. You were level. Now you are not. 1 place down, and the thought that assembles itself is the silver medalist's thought. This also explains something you have probably noticed and never explained. The successes that hurt most are rarely the biggest ones. They are the near misses. The person who got the thing you applied for, the one who started at the same time as you, the sibling. The gap being small is not what makes it bearable. The gap being small is precisely what makes it unbearable. Here is a test you can run tonight, and it is more revealing than it sounds. Your friend got the promotion and it cost you an evening. Now think about the other people close to you, someone at the same distance who just got engaged, someone who just finished a marathon, someone whose child was accepted somewhere impressive, someone who bought a house in a town you have no interest in living in. Some of those landed clean, genuine, uncomplicated gladness, no cold half second at all, and some of them did not. If this were a general defect in your character, it would fire on all of them equally. It does not. It fires on some and stays completely silent on others, and the pattern is not random. Aristotle catches this too. He notes that the things which provoke it are the things tied to reputation and honour and standing, and that the pull is strongest when you want the thing yourself, or when you believe you are entitled to it, or when having it would put you slightly above the people around you, or when not having it puts you slightly below them, slightly above, slightly below. He keeps returning to the small distances because that is where the mechanism lives, which means the emotion is doing something you did not ask it to do. It is publishing a list. Everything you have ever felt that cold half second about is on that list. Everything you have felt nothing about is off it. And the list is not the list you would write if someone asked you directly what you want out of your life, because that list is edited. That list is the respectable version, the one you would say out loud to a room or to a partner or to yourself in a journal at the end of a hard year. This one is not edited. It cannot be, because it is generated by a reflex faster than your ability to spin it. That is why the feeling is so unbearable. And it is not the reason you have been telling yourself. You have been telling yourself it is unbearable because it makes you a bad person. It is unbearable because it is accurate. It tells you that you still want the thing you have publicly stopped mentioning, that the ambition you announced you had outgrown is still fully operational, that the person you claim not to compete with is the exact person you have been measuring yourself against for 11 years. You are not ashamed of the cruelty in it. You are ashamed of the honesty in it. There is one more reason closeness makes this worse, and it is the one that does the most quiet damage to good friendships. Distance protects the person you envy from you, and it also protects you from them. When someone is far away, you get the result and nothing else. The headline, the announcement, the finished thing. You do not get the process, and a result without a process is easy to file under luck or timing or advantages you never had. The story writes itself, and it costs you nothing. Closeness removes that option. You were there for the process. You know how many hours it actually took, because you were the one they called at 11 at night in the bad month. You know what they were up against, and you know it was not obviously more than what you are up against. You know they are not a genius. You know this specifically, and you know it affectionately. And now it is the problem. Because if they are not a genius and it worked anyway, then the difference between their outcome and yours is not talent and not luck and not circumstance. The difference is something about you. That is the real content of the half second. It is not a wish for their failure. It is a verdict on yourself, delivered instantly, using them as the measuring instrument. And the more you know about how they got there, the more authority the verdict has. This is why the news lands hardest when it comes from someone whose starting line you can actually remember. Same first job, same broke year, same conversations about what you were both going to do eventually. When you share a starting line, their finish line is not information about them. It is information about you. And there is a second cost stacked on top. Because you cannot admit any of this, you manage it. You are slightly less available. You take a little longer to reply. You are warm but calibrated. You do not bring their news up unprompted. They notice. They cannot name it either, so they do the same thing back. On the theory that they are being considerate by not rubbing it in. Nothing is ever said. Nobody does anything cruel. The friendship just gets quieter. And eventually you both describe it as drifting apart, as though it were a natural process, rather than two people separately, silently managing an emotion neither would say out loud. In 1930, Bertrand Russell published a book called The Conquest of Happiness and gave envy its own chapter. He was 58. He was not writing from a comfortable chair. In 1916, he had been prosecuted for an anti-war pamphlet and dismissed from his teaching post at Cambridge. In 1918, he was convicted a second time and served 6 months in Brixton Prison. This is a man who had been stripped of position and status by name, publicly, twice, writing about what status does to the mind. His central observation matches the range limit exactly, arrived at independently from a completely different direction. Russell writes that we do not envy good fortune, we regard as hopelessly out of reach. He points out that in societies where the hierarchy was believed to be fixed and divinely ordained, the lowest classes did not envy the highest, because the gap was not conceived as crossable. And then he puts it in one line: beggars do not envy millionaires, though of course they will envy other beggars who are more successful. That sentence is the whole thesis in 12 words. The millionaire is out of range. The next beggar is in range. Absolute wealth is irrelevant. Only the gap matters. Then Russell adds the piece Aristotle does not. And it is the piece that closes the escape hatch. Because there is an obvious plan sitting in front of you at this point. If the pain comes from being one place down, then the fix is to move up. Get the promotion, close the gap, win the thing. Russell blocks it. If you want glory, he says, you might envy Napoleon. But Napoleon envied Caesar, and Caesar envied Alexander. And Alexander, he adds dryly, probably envied Hercules, who never existed at all. Follow that chain, because it is doing real work. Each of those men was, at the moment described, at the top of the known world. Each of them found somebody one rung up. And the last one in the sequence had to invent his rival out of mythology, because there were no living humans left to lose to. You cannot escape this by winning. There is always another rung, and when the rungs run out, the mind manufactures one. The mechanism does not measure your life against the standard. It measures your life against whoever is currently nearest and slightly ahead. And as you climb, the person nearest and slightly ahead simply changes identity. Russell's own conclusion is the one people skip past because it sounds too small to matter. He says that simply understanding the causes of your own envy is a long step toward curing it, not suppressing it, not out-earning it. Understanding what it is doing, which is what the next part is for. There is a consequence buried in Russell's chapter that he could only half see in 1930, and it is the reason all of this matters more now than it did then. If the mechanism only fires at short range, then the size of your range determines how much of this you live with. And your range is not fixed. It is set by who you can see closely enough to compare yourself to. For most of human history, that number was small. Aristotle names the limit directly. People at opposite ends of the sea do not envy each other, and neither do people separated by a century. Not because they were more virtuous, because they had no access. Your comparison set was your village, your trade, your family, and the 40 or so people whose lives you actually observed. Everyone else was a rumour. Russell watched the start to break. He points out that when the social hierarchy was believed fixed and ordained by God, the lowest classes did not envy the highest, because the gap was not conceived as something a person crosses. What he saw in his own era was the loosening of that. Social position becoming unstable, and the idea taking hold that everyone is fundamentally equal. He is explicit about the effect. This makes envy available to everybody. Once any gap is crossable, in principle, every gap becomes a live comparison. Now hold that thought and look at what you actually did today. You saw the inside of several hundred lives, not headlines about them, the texture, what their kitchen looks like, what they had for lunch, the car, the trip, the raise, the wedding, the body, the studio. Enough detail that they read as people rather than satellites. That is the mechanism's trigger condition delivered at industrial volume. Not because anything was done to you, but because closeness used to require presence, and now it does not. A stranger who shows you the inside of their life for 6 months is no longer a stranger to the part of your brain that runs this comparison. They have entered the range, so the ancient number was 40. Yours is effectively unbounded, and it refreshes constantly, and it is filtered so that everyone in it is having a slightly better week than you. The mechanism has not changed at all. It fires exactly as it did 23 centuries ago at exactly the same trigger. What changed is that it used to sit idle most of the year, and now it has an unlimited supply of people close enough to compare, which makes the next distinction less optional than it used to be. Before the practical part, there is a distinction that changes what all of this means, and Aristotle makes it one chapter after the definition. He describes a second emotion with the same trigger. Same proximity requirement, same comparison, same pain at seeing someone like you holding something you do not have. Everything about the setup is identical. What differs is the direction. The first version wants the gap closed by their loss. It wants them brought down to where you are, and it will settle for the world simply going wrong for them. It produces nothing, because the entire aim is subtraction. The second version wants the gap closed by your gain. It wants what they have, and it does not require that they lose it. Aristotle treats this one as a mark of good character rather than a defect, and he notes who tends to feel which. The small-minded and the old lean toward the first. The young and the great-souled lean toward the second. He also lists what tends to get emulated rather than resented, and the list is short: courage, wisdom, public office. The kinds of things whose holders get praised by poets rather than merely counted. What these have in common is that another person, having them, does not use up your supply. There is no fixed quantity of courage in the world, that they have now taken a share of. Do not take the age part literally. Take the structural point, because it is the useful one. Two people can experience the identical half second of cold, and what happens in the next 10 seconds decides which emotion it was. The trigger does not determine the outcome. The trigger is neutral. It is a signal that says someone comparable to you has something you want. What you do with that signal is the entire question. And there is a test that sorts it in about 5 seconds. One question asked honestly. If your friend's promotion were quietly withdrawn tomorrow, the offer rescinded, the whole thing collapsing through no fault of theirs, would some part of you feel relief? If the answer is no, if the thought is just bleak, then what you felt was the second kind. You want the thing, you do not want them to lose the thing. There is nothing to be ashamed of and something real to work with. If the answer is yes, even faintly, that is the first kind. And you are better off knowing it than denying it. Not because you are a monster, because that version has never once produced anything. It cannot. Subtraction is not a strategy. Nothing you can take from them ever arrives in your hands. None of this makes the half-second stop. Anyone promising you that is selling something. Proximity is the trigger, and the only way to eliminate the trigger is to eliminate closeness, which is a cure considerably worse than the disease. So the goal is not silence. The goal is to stop wasting the signal. Name it instead of denying it. Not to them, internally in plain words, within the first minute. That was envy, and it fired because they are close to me. This sounds trivial, and it is not, because the shame reflex is what makes the whole thing expensive. Unnamed, it converts into distance, into the slightly slower reply, into the friendship going quiet. Named, it stays a passing sensation. You are not endorsing it. You are declining to spend the next 4 hours in a spiral about it. Read the list. For 1 week, write down every single time it fires. 2 words each, no analysis, no explanation. At the end of the week, you will be holding an unedited inventory of what you actually want. Compare it to the version of your ambitions you would say out loud. Where those two lists disagree, the honest one is the reflex, and the disagreement is the most useful information you will get all year. Run the withdrawal test every time. Would you feel relief if they lost it? That one question separates the version that can be converted into fuel from the version that can only be endured. Both are survivable. They require completely different handling, and most people never learn which one they are dealing with. Check whether you actually want the thing or just the position. Sometimes the reflex fires on something you would hate having. You envy the promotion and you do not want the job. You want the ranking, the standing among the same 40 people. Notice which. Wanting the thing is workable. You can go get it. Wanting the ranking is the trap Napoleon was in, and that one never terminates. Say it out loud to the right person. Once, not to everyone. Not to the person who triggered it, usually, but one honest conversation with someone who can hear it without flinching. I felt something ugly when I heard, and I hate that I did. Collapses the isolation more than any amount of private reasoning. You will discover the person across from you has an identical list. Everyone has one. Almost nobody says so. Aim it at admiration when the conversion is available. Russell's own remedy was not suppression. He argued there is a compensating passion built into human nature, admiration, and that anyone who wants to increase human happiness has to want more of that and less of the other. The practical version is unglamorous. Admiration requires you to look at the person, and this emotion requires you to look at the gap. Ask what they actually did, not how they compare to you. What the work was. The two states cannot occupy the same attention at the same time, and the one you feed is the one that grows. Then keep them close anyway. This is the whole point, and it is the part that costs something. The mechanism will keep firing for exactly as long as they remain near you, and the tempting solution is to drift. To let the gap in status become a gap in contact, because distance genuinely does turn the feeling off. It works. It also costs you the friendship, and you will describe the loss afterward as something that just happened. The half second is the price of proximity. It is not evidence that you love them less. It is evidence they are close enough to compare. And close enough to compare is where every real relationship in your life is standing. The description you just heard was never written for readers. Of the roughly 200 works Aristotle produced, 31 survive. As lecture notes, drafts he spoke from in the room. He was teaching people to read what actually moves a human being, and he put this emotion on the list because he considered it that reliable. Envy was never a measurement of your character. It was only ever a measurement of distance. So if you felt something cold in the half second before you said congratulations, that is not a defect in you. That is what it costs to let someone stand close enough to compare. That is not a flaw in the friendship. That is what being close is. If this named something you have felt and never said out loud, subscribe. Every week we take apart one piece of ordinary experience that almost nobody names correctly. Until next time.